Hello, we are live. I am Jessie of the Bookish Mom, and if you don't know me, then that's kind of weird because this one's being hosted on my channel. We have everybody and their cats here today, except for mine wanted to be a butthead and escape. So I will let everybody introduce themselves. We'll go start with Stephanie and go clockwise.
I'm Stephanie. This is Lucy. She has RBF. Um,
Yes.
my channel is Miss Richards Reads, and I'm excited to be here.
I'm Angela. This is Poo Tao. Channel is Literature Science Alliance. I'm very tired.
I'm Roger. This is Jujubee, who doesn't get as much screen time, and my channel is Roger's Read.
And we are here to talk about Yumi and the Night Painter.
Yay!
Nightmare Painter. I keep saying it wrong, even though I've read it almost twice at this point.
Well, it's because the title's too long. Any title
It
more than
is.
3 words is too long, and that's how
Yeah.
I feel, and I'm just holding to it.
I don't
It
disagree.
is
I just
better
call it
than the
Yumi.
Frugal Wizard's Handbook for
Look.
Surviving Medieval England.
Look,
It's like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy knew exactly how long to be in its title and stopped.
it's just too long, and my brain just goes, meh, what's the first word? That's all we're getting. Or the acronyms, but we can't really acronym this one. It would be really weird.
Anyways,
Yeah.
we're not here to talk about that book because that would be real spicy if we were talking about that book.
It would. We are not discussing the one that does not exist, but we are discussing Yumi, and probably mostly in spoilers. We'll start off, I guess, with some non-spoilers, non-Cosmere spoilers, but at this point, I think most people have experienced it, and we're going to jump into everybody's kind of initial thoughts. And Stephanie, if you want to start with, what did you think of it in general?
I really, really liked this one. I actually started a little bit ahead of what I normally do, and it was so compelling. I read it in like 2 or 3 sittings, and it was just so cozy and adorable, and I just loved it so much. I don't know if I love it more than Trust because I love them for different reasons, but it was definitely high up there.
I think I like it the same-ish as Tress, although it's left my mind more than Tress, and I read it like a month ago, so I don't know what that means, but like this summer's been weird, so like I'm taking all of my opinions about books with a healthy grain of salt this summer. I think for me it was because it's like dual point of view, and Yumi, the Nightmare Painter, and I just liked Yumi's perspective so much more than the other. And it took me a fair bit of the book to finally stop being annoyed at the Nightmare Painter, if only because it's just such a classic. I don't know. I think it's just a classic. Insert yourself into this character. He thinks he's not worth it. He's all like melodramatic, broody boy. I don't know. He just like felt like such a trope that I'm so tired of. But then he does get, he gets fleshed out a bit more. So I got a little less annoyed, but it took me a while to like care about his plight. Way more into Yumi's situation. So yeah, I mean, it was generally, it was a good time. I think what I've noticed with the secret projects is that they're good books, but they're not like they have not even come close to like reaching my like all-time favorites in my head. Like when I think of the books I still want to reread, these ones really like, they're good. I don't mind them. I think I can tell they're fun projects for him, but I kind of do think I like the ones where it's obvious that these weren't just things he wrote at night when he had free time.
That makes sense.
It does make sense. Roger,
I had fun with Yumi. It doesn't come close to Tress for me. Like, I love Tress. And maybe that's just because it was also like the start of the Sanderson year. And so like there was more hype for it. I read it in like a day. This one I took a lot longer to read. And then I also knew that my physical copy was coming. So I just like put it on hold and didn't mind like not picking it up for a week until the physical came. So that says something if I can put it down for a week and not mind that I did that. But it was fun. It was cute. The characters weren't as strong for me as they seem to be for some other people, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I also really enjoyed it. I think it might be tied with Tress, but slightly under. Because like I think I also liked Tress a lot more. I think for me it was the humor. Like I loved the humor in Tress, and I know that we didn't get it as much in Yumi, and even though we had the same narrator, which again, anything told by Hoyd, I am probably going to love because it's just like my type of storytelling with a little bit of the self-insert. We didn't get as much of the self-insert this time. But that being said, I really actually liked the romance because everyone says that's not something that Sanderson does super well. And it's not something he does super often, but this being more heavily romance, at least for him, I really enjoyed it. And as I really like the inspirations behind it. So I think just knowing the inspirations behind it, like kind of picking up on like, okay, that's obviously from, you know, what he said, like, what is it, Final Fantasy X and different anime. Like, I'm like, okay, I can pick the things out. And I'm really enjoying like seeing where that inspiration went with him. I think that made it more fun for me, but still think I liked Tress just a little more.
And
Well, I
I
think this
had
one wore its inspirations more on the sleeve, so it was more of a familiar story for me for whatever reason. Like I'm like, okay, of course we're doing the bathhouse scene. Of course we're doing like a ramen noodle shop scene because like every anime ever does that.
You have to have the ramen, and yeah.
I wasn't familiar with the inspirations. Like I've heard of them, but I haven't read or played them.
Well, I'm the
So
one who has like the anti thought, anyways, because I don't really see Final Fantasy X in it beyond that there's a guy and a girl who happen to have to work together. Like
Right.
the plot is not similar. The characters are not
Gotcha.
all that similar because, I guess you could theoretically say the characters are similar if they were like gender swapped, because you have broody boy and kind of more happy girl, but like in Final Fantasy X, you have dopey boy and
Yeah.
like uber serious girl.
Oh, see, when you describe, I have not played the game. You just
You
described
should.
Dopey Boy and Super Serious Girl. That's actually how I define both of them in this book. Because that's why I don't
Yeah,
like
but
the
he's
Nightmare
not as
Pager, because I'm like,
overt.
you're trying to be edgelord and you are just
And
a
you're
dope.
not.
No, but when I say dopey, like, have you seen the like infamous laughing scene with Titus trying to make Yuna laugh? Like, it is, like he's yeah, he's a time.
But yeah. But I
I
mean,
haven't
it's just
played
funny
that game
because
so
just
many
the words you
times.
used, I'm like, oh, well, that's how I would define them. So, but I mean, when I read the afterword or the author's notes, I was like, oh, yeah, I mean, I can definitely tell aesthetically, and like I'm sure there's tropes and plot beats I, didn't see. But I think what bothered me was like I wasn't really connecting to the characters' relationship. Like I could see their individual stories and why what we go through in this narrative was helpful for each of them. But like the actual like slow burn, because that's what this was supposed to feel like, it's like, I mean, I had just read The Best of All Possible Worlds. I watched serialized TV all the time. Like this slow burn, there was no swooning for me. I was not buying in. I did not understand. And like, I like Sanderson romances. Like I'm all in on Ellen and Vin. I really like the Warbreaker one. I really love Mistborn Era 2s. So like normally they land for me. And like the slow burn in Mistborn Era 2, I'm like all in on. So this one I was just like, okay, I know this is what's going to happen because this is what the story is telling me is going to happen, but like I don't have buy-in.
Pooh-Cow's like, it's okay, Mom.
It's okay. It's okay.
I think I enjoyed it more because I wasn't sure what to expect with this one, so my expectations were like uber low. And I've been in a fantasy slump, so this was just a really good time for me.
I mean,
But
after Frugal
it
Wizard,
has its flaws, but it was just a good time.
Well, it's just
Thank
interesting
you.
because it definitely has stuck with me less. Like I remember much more about Trek. Like since it's like a blessing and a curse that the live show is a little bit further away because now I don't have any recency bias because I read it like almost 2 months ago, and
yeah,
it's like it just does not stick as much. I mean the aesthetic sticks with me, like the cool teal and purple, mainly just because when you have it in the physical, it's really pretty and like the chapter headers change and like the in between parts change and like
Ooh.
that.
It is a
That
really
sticks with me more than the story, which is
yeah, it is probably the prettiest. Like Tress was gorgeous, but like I was so excited when this arrived. I was like,
yeah.
Well, and like what's funny is like I remember, Roger, how much you really liked it when you were reading it when you finished it. So it's interesting, like
Mhm.
did not
how much
stick.
things like not that it's cooled and you have like negative memories now, but it's like
Doesn't have much staying power.
Yeah. That makes sense. Like Tress definitely did have that staying
Mhm.
power. Still, I think with Roger and with myself, like
Well, I'm also
Yes.
just curious, like, would it have stuck as much if it wasn't such like a moment? Because I just Poochow was just like, "What about me?
right.
Pet me?"
Pet me.
Because like
He's the star of the show.
He is the moment.
it was the start of the Sanderson. Like I feel like a lot of people have fallen off. Like I don't see as many reviews of like Yumi as I did for
Mhm.
Tress, and I don't have as many people talking about Tress.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, I haven't been keeping my finger on the pulse of like all the Sanderson stuff, and like
Mhm.
I've just been reading them as they come out. And like this one, I think in the moment I had the most fun reading it, but then like afterwards, when I like the emotional impact just wasn't lasting for me, I guess, because like it is all about the climax of both of these characters' arcs together. And so
Right,
since
yeah.
I didn't have the buy-in into this relationship, like the plot stuff got like, you know, intense as we were getting near the end. It's like I
Right?
need to make sure, does everyone land okay? But I wasn't like on the edge of my seat like they were. Like, you know, the
Yeah.
stakes for the characters didn't feel like I had the same stakes as the
Mhm.
reader, which is
Yeah,
kind of
that makes sense.
I will say the stakes didn't feel as high in certain points. Even for me, I was like, okay,
Yeah,
like
this
it
was
doesn't feel as high stakes.
this was a cozier one, I feel
Mhm.
like it was very relaxing
Right.
to me.
Well, and like I forget how many words this one is, because like how long is it in comparison to Elantris or Warbreaker?
Mhm.
I don't know. I think my guess is it's 150 or 200 pages less. That's my instinct.
I think so.
That would
And
make
it's
sense.
like
Because it didn't take long to read.
because I think that's how I
Mm-mm.
feel about both Tress and this. Is it's like these are solid. They're solid books. I think they're a tiny bit long for what they are, just because like I feel like they're so tightly paced. It's like I want just the movie or mini series version of it. Like it feels cinematic. Versus when we have
It
like the longer
does.
Sanderson books, I'm like, well, no, this is the right place for it because it's very meandery and like, you know, it's more drawn out. So yeah, but I do think it's interesting that this reminded me the most of Warbreaker, because I do think Warbreaker is the project most written like these projects, where he was just writing a chapter for every couple weeks and posting them on his website.
Yeah. I always forget that that's what he did for Warbreaker.
I didn't realize that's what he did.
Yeah, it was like his serialized free self-pub thingy back in 2009? 9.
Wow.
You guys have no idea how bad his breath smells.
I'm just dying though. Like the whole
Just
it's melting my heart.
I know. And
He's
Decker's
really good
in
with
there
his
just
paws.
like
He doesn't use his claws, even though he is actually putting a lot of force on me right now because he doesn't want the hand to be moved.
my cat absolutely does not want to cuddle. Ever.
Yeah, this whole video is just gonna be us like, oh.
Oh, kitty.
He does not care that we've lost a cat. He's like, oh, so more people? And I'm like, you don't know what's happening in a month. We are getting more cats.
I mean,
he
there's
wants
never
to be an
anything
only
wrong.
cat so bad, and I'm like,
Not gonna happen.
That's how Lucy is. She wants to be the only one.
I don't think
anyways,
Deco would do well as a second cat. He likes being an only animal. We
do
have
we have other
noticed.
spoiler-free thoughts before we can?
Yeah, I think we're
Sorry.
spoiler-free wise. I think we are all set, but we are going to dive into all of the spoilers for Yubi and the Nightmare Painter. And then we'll kind of be like, okay, and Cosmere spoilers.
Sounds
Because we are reading it all.
reasonable. Yep.
And I
Well.
don't have banners because, I forgot to do all that.
And if I forget, I have a question about a potential Cosmere spoiler later in the show.
Okay.
Yay. So now we are on just Yumi spoilers. Because, I'm not good at pre-planning things.
All right. Well, what do you guys think? What was the moment where you guys are like, oh, this is like an interesting plot? Like, I think it took a while for me to understand like what was gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though I watch a lot of anime, so like I kind of was like, oh, okay, I get a lot of the beats. I actually haven't read any of the manga or watched any of the anime that he specifically like did his inspiration on.
Yeah.
But a lot of the plot beats are the same for, just anime, a lot of anime popular in general. And I've played Final Fantasy X like a bajillion times. But I do kind of agree with you, Roger, that it wasn't as blatant in the Final Fantasy X references as it was in like, hey, this is very anime inspired.
Because even like at its core, Final Fantasy X is more of a traveling story because you're going from temple to temple, gaining new summons to try to have this whole pilgrimage. That's the whole point.
It's a pilgrimage.
This one is not really a pilgrimage. It's not really. It's like I don't know. I don't get it. I know. Patrick was really sticking to his guns about it when we talked about it, and
he was.
Okay, whatever.
I can understand that though, because like Tress, you could tell it was inspired by the Princess Bride. Like it was very. It had those same vibes.
Mm-hmm.
So, from what I've heard, other than Patrick, I haven't really heard anything about the Final Fantasy inspiration, except for
Patrick and Al were ready to fight me about it, and I was like,
Interesting. Very interesting.
They were very into it. Like I can see the Final Fantasy X like inspiration for sure, but like it leaned heavier for me into like a bunch of anime.
I kind of didn't, and obviously he was writing this book for himself, so he can do what he wants, but I didn't actually like how heavily, blatantly inspired by all our cultures and worlds that it was.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, like, I mean, obviously when you create cultures, you're always inspired by the cultures you see around you. So it's like this happens in Roshar and other places too, but this is so aggressively, these are Asian cultures. And he chose 2 different ones, but I think even the art is Chinese and not Japanese or Korean. And it's just like, it felt like there was a lot of obviously tasteful homage to these pieces of art that are, from these different countries. But it's just like, your world building chops for culture are not strong enough for me to feel like you've done this like to the level I would want it to be, I guess. Does that make sense? Like, it's not bad, it's not egregious, but I'm just like, it's just, I didn't feel like these characters, if I were to suddenly like place them in Japan or Korea, would fit in those cultures. They felt just like white people dressing up. I don't know.
I can see that though.
Like, I don't know.
I mean, I will say, just from like my visual reading perspective, I didn't really have issues like envisioning an Asian culture and Asian characters. Because I feel like that's kind of your go-to, like whatever you are, that's kind of what the characters are when you're reading, and until you get more info.
Well, I think it helps that there was art, and like, I'm not saying it didn't do the aesthetic world building, like aesthetically, sure, but that's what we always do when we surface level pull from cultures. We take the aesthetic.
Right.
It's like the easiest thing to do.
Right. Because we all know what it looks like.
Right.
Maybe.
But again, I also haven't read the animes, I haven't played the video games, and so it's just like, maybe this is like character-wise the tropes, but like Yumi maybe wasn't too bad for me, but the Nightmare Painter, I'm like, this is like the average Sanderson dude that he's written like 10 million times and 10 million variations. This is not that deep. And it's obviously a Sanderson insert of like when he's struggling with his art, and I'm like, like, I don't know. It wasn't a big deal. Like, I still gave the book 4 stars, but I'm like, I don't notice these things when you're just making your own world from scratch. So just do that.
Just do that. Yeah,
I was
definitely
starting to remember Wheel of Time syndrome of like, the cultural world building is not deep just because they're wearing different shoes here. Like, that's not. That's Wheel of Time culture world building. So.
I didn't get far enough into that.
Or their buttons are slightly different.
Oh God.
It's very heavily inspired by aesthetic things, which cultures are in clothing, architecture. Those things are important to culture, but like, they mean nothing if you don't have the other stuff too.
Right.
That makes sense.
This is what happens when I read the Dandelion Dynasty. Like, I'm just like, I've now seen ideal world building of culture. And I'm just like,
I still need to pick that up.
I have no idea if you'll like it.
The first 2, it's really good.
I think I will. I have high hopes.
I can't tell when anyone will or won't like it. I have no sense. I can have a stronger sense of if someone will hate it, but otherwise not. No.
Well, I won't hate it, so. But no, I do think I connected more with Yumi.
Yeah.
Then it took me a while to connect with the Nightmare Painter. He annoyed me for a little longer than I liked. And full spoiler, when we got the reveal of why his friends hated him so much, I was let down.
It was a letdown.
I was like, that's it. Like, that could have been a conversation. That did not have to be that serious. Like, I get why it's like a small thing and that it was like frustrating to them, but it's like, I was expecting this like world burning, like he did something absolutely awful to betray them. And it's like, that's it. All he did was like lie about getting accepted to this elite portion of the school. And they're pissed because they're like, this ruined our chances.
I also think it's so funny how naive they all were about like the idea of meritocracy. I'm like, okay.
Right. Yeah. Like they're like, oh, we had no idea that they were just the rich people's kids and not like actually good at what they do.
Yeah. And maybe that's why it was kind of a letdown, because it's like, well, they wouldn't have got in anyway.
Yeah.
So what was the point? But maybe that's also kind of the world building. Like maybe he should have.
Well, and I think
spent a bit more on that.
This happened to me with Tress too, and I understand that Sanderson was just playing around with Hoyd's voice, and I think there's a fun quality to Hoyd telling a story because he knows more, and sometimes those snippets are really fun. But I do think it reads different than when we read like Mistborn or Stormlight, when it's like you can really understand Kaladin, Ellen, Vinz, their internal struggles and why certain small things are so big to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're just with them. And here we have, again, this narrator step remove of Hoyd interpreting his thoughts. And yes, you still get kind of third person limited moments, but it's like, I don't think he wasn't open with us, the reader. So it's like, I can't really, like, why are you keeping these secrets from us? Like, I know why Yumi doesn't know, but why don't you think about what happened?
Right.
And I feel like too, like, not to keep comparing it to Tress, but I'm going to keep doing it.
It's hard not to.
I feel like with Tress, I enjoyed it more, but this one, even though I know like he does certain things or explains certain things that we wouldn't know, I don't know if I would miss him if it was written without him.
I would miss Design. Is that her name? Can't
remember.
remember.
I would miss her, but I don't think I'd miss Hoyd.
I feel like Design should have narrated it while Hoyd was a statue. Like Design narrating it and then like Hoyd coming in at the end because he's like this statue.
Or I would have just preferred maybe like a footnote method, like in Chorus of Dragons, where Hoyd is just there in the footnotes, and then it's still like your standard third person. Like the narrative framing, I think for me, Sanderson's approach doesn't make me. I think it provides more distance than I want. But I also don't want frugal Wizards guy where I'm in first person. Like I need the middle ground in books.
Well, and I think I liked it better, and I liked Hoyd better in Tress because he was actually like in the story.
That's
whereas
true.
Here in Yumi, he was a statue chilling in a noodle shop till the end. So he was farther removed, but he was still there. But like he didn't influence the story the way he did in Tress.
Yeah.
So it's like we either go full Hoyd or take two more steps back from Hoyd. Like I don't think there's like that middle ground of Hoydiness. Hoydiness.
Yeah, because I feel like even without him, he could have woven in that information some other way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
did you guys like the twists and turns besides the school one? Like they're, when they both think they're on these other planets, but they're really the same planet.
I mean, I did enjoy those, but I went in like, I'm just gonna enjoy this. This isn't gonna be like Stormlight level, but it was fun for me.
Yeah, so, I did like those twists better than the school twist for sure. Though, how do all of his friends not know? Like at one point, they were good friends back on the school thing that just bothers. How'd they not know that he didn't have a sister after all these years?
I mean, I have friends, honestly, who like I've known for like years, and until like they tell me, oh, I have to go home for my sister, something I'm like, oh, you have a sister? Like it's just very dependent.
Yeah,
and bring it up.
He feels very like he's in the friend group, but he's distant from the friend group.
Because he
Kinda
doesn't
like
think he
a-
deserves friends.
Yeah,
Oh, deserve.
like a background friend.
Yeah.
And then explaining to them after the fact, as they're like kissing in the rain, like, no, just kidding, she's not my sister.
Yeah.
I
That
kind of
was,
wish we would have gotten that
awesome.
explanation other than like he explained it. Because like that's kind of all we got was a like, don't worry, he explained that they weren't siblings.
I think that would have been entertaining to read.
Would have. Especially from a Hoyd POV.
But I think if we're talking big twists, I got a little annoyed at like the big twist about how like this world is really not what we thought, and there's just these little pockets where they're trying to keep basically Yumi in stasis, because we spent a lot of time talking about like the physics of how the trees work in Yumi's place, and none of it was real. So I was like, well, why did we spend this time setting up like, oh, the trees can ignore physics here? It's not that they like there was these whole passages from Hoyd that I highlighted because I thought that they would be important about how this world works, and it's like, oh, never mind, that was all a lie. It was just in her
how
mind.
the world was before the machine.
Yeah, but then why is that pertinent to now?
Oh, see, those are my favorite parts. Just because I just like when Sanderson does odd things on a world. Like that's the part of world building I think he does in a way that interests my brain, even if it's not relevant. Like I guess I'm not here to debate relevancy. I thought it was fun.
I mean,
Well,
them
you're
flying
even talking
on
about
a tree.
But you're talking
Those
about
are
how
the
it's too long
things-
for what it was. Those
Yeah,
are
but I
areas
guess
that
for
was
me,
adding
it was too
length
long
to add
because
length.
it didn't. I don't. The thing is, though, like those were all Yumi chapter. Well, were they Yumi? I don't. We were on Yumi's half of the equation, and I always had the most fun there. Whereas the urban fantasy part, I was like, this is cool. Like aesthetically, it's very cyber and like kind of fun. But like that world, I think we spent a lot of time doing like what Stephanie was saying, like kind of cozy mystery trope type things. And I'm just like, okay, we're doing the montage for a couple chapters too long. We could speed up the montage just a little bit.
And I feel like the world building in Yumi's world was more memorable than Nightmare Painter's world.
Like when you think of a fantasy,
which I know
you
is
think
different.
of floating trees.
Yeah. The only thing I remember really from his world are the high on lines.
Mm. Well, in his world, like I said, it was meant to be, I think, our first look into what a contemporary state of a country could be, where the magic has been converted to electricity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, which I think is kind of interesting, but like, I don't know. I just think the Nightmare Painter half had a lot of missed potential, because I think the nightmares are super cool, and learning what they are was also cool. But like, we spent so little time on nightmares, and I just thought they were really interesting mysteries, and we didn't really get to like lean into that. And there were so many moments when the book was like, and then Yumi look outside, and if Painter had been there, she would have known that that's the nightmare, and like, well, then what happens next? And like, we have like months in this world where nothing happens.
That is true. And I think big twist wise, like figuring out that the nightmares are actually from her world and like were people at one time was a really cool twist. But I do think we didn't lean into, like you said, the nightmares enough. Like I wish we would have gotten a little bit more of those. I think we kind of fell off on them. It's like at some point I was like, yeah, but what about the nightmares? Like what had happened to them? Like we're just chilling along in her world, and which I'm loving, but I'm like, but what about this like rampaging nightmare? Like, do we forget about this? And it's like we forget about it for a while, and then we come back with the big twist of, and they were people once, and you're like, but now I want more information on that.
It was so much more focused on Yumi and Painter's relationship, and everything else was kind of a backdrop.
And maybe that's why it felt too long for what it was, because it's like, okay, you have all of these cool trappings going around. This is a fun Freaky Friday plot arc. That's fun. But like, this could be an hour and a half to 2 hour rom-com. And instead I'm reading this book for 10 hours, like, like that's basically where like, I feel like for me, I would have the same, if not more emotional beats, because a movie would have like music or something like that to like help me pretend I care about the character's romance, because the movie is telling me right now that they should be musical. You know what I mean?
They're hitting those music plots. You got to get those.
I don't think I needed 10. Was it 10, 11? I don't know how many times they bathed together. I don't think I needed it. It was so much.
I didn't hate the bathing scenes. I thought they were funny, but like that is
fine.
Yeah, that's true. But that is like really common bathhouse scenes in a lot of anime. Like it
This
just
many,
always
and
happens.
that's also different because it's anime. So again, it's a shorter time frame.
Yeah,
That's
it is
true.
a shorter time frame.
Like manga, anime, like you can be like, oh, we're in the bath scene again. I'll read the text and keep flipping the pages. Like,
Right.
I did like how she finally had to watch her own hair though, and was like, "What do I do with
That
this
was
stuff?"
hilarious.
oh, I do love Yumi's arc of agency and also balancing it with what she finds important and what she believes is her purpose on. I think Yumi's arc is really great.
Yeah.
Also lines right up there with Sanderson always pushing again religion and when religion is actually a lie, but also there is maybe still a spiritual connection you can have and find. Yumi's arc is great. And I love that her art is stacking blocks, and I love that design understood it right away. I thought all of that was really funny.
Right.
Yes.
I did like the rock stacking. I feel like we didn't get enough of the actual painting in Painter's World.
Yeah.
And like it's like, okay, well, it turns nightmares temporarily back into whatever you paint. But like,
Well,
is
it's
there
hard to talk the
more?
Cosmere section of this video because so much of how I understood this book is from
Was-
what I learned in Stormlight.
Right. Well,
Like,
now
that is so much of how I understood whatever was happening.
right. I feel like that should open us up to Cosmere spoilers.
What are we allowed to
What
talk
are we
about,
up to?
Roger?
Yeah, I can't remember what
Everything
we're
up till now. So
Everything up
technically,
to
you
now, so
shouldn't
no
be talking
Stormlight.
about Stormlight.
So here's my question then before I forget it. Is Design the one that was with
Okay, here's my
Electronic?
spoiler-free take of who Design is. Design is someone that you meet in Stormlight at the end of Oathbringer and more
Okay.
in before.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're
But
not.
other-
Yeah, I don't think we can remember. So Stormlight's not. We're not up to.
no, we
But
yeah.
Stormlight, we always.
Oh, I forget.
I was like, that's why we refer to Roger, who knows where our place is.
Okay,
because
but that
we're-
answered
I mean,
my
we've read
question.
basically
That
everything
works.
now but
But
Stormlight
Stormlight, yeah.
That's true.
and White Sand, but White Sand is not really relevant in this discussion.
I was about to say, do we have
Is
to
White
read
Sand
White
relevant?
Sand? I don't want to.
I read
I've
the
been
first.
thinking about this, and I'm like, I want to wait for the third graphic novel to come out and just read that stupid bind up. Because I've read the first
Right?
graphic novel.
I
don't
did
wanna
read the first graphic novel, but
Anyways, I don't know. I was thinking
Doesn't the
about it.
bind
And I was
out
like, this...
come out this month though?
I have no
does
idea.
it?
I have no strong opinion either way. I'll be honest.
The only thing that matters in White Sand is the sand.
Oh, hence the
Coarse
title.
and rough. It gets everywhere.
No, really
It
good. We
does
can go
have
back and
the
look because I
person-
think right now we have it, so we're almost double dipping because of Arcanum Unbounded. So we could always just not do White Sand and push Arcanum Unbounded up so that there's a little bit more of a space, so we're not kind of talking about things back to back.
True.
We'll look. We'll talk.
Sounds
We'll
good.
talk. We'll get this. We'll get it together one day.
So what?
I mean, it's also like I don't know how much of a discussion we can have about 3 graphic novels. Like, there's not that much there
True.
because I have read White Sand before.
I barely remember it.
I haven't read obviously the edited version, right? Because he's releasing the newer version that's technically more Cosmere
Oh yeah.
correct.
And I think maybe more consistent art because I know they had issues with artists. And stuff.
Mhm.
I don't know for sure.
Okay.
Okay,
We'll
so I
figure
think
it
I
out.
can talk about the magic system in this more leaning on Warbreaker.
Yeah.
We haven't read Emperor's Soul yet, so I can't lean on that. Okay. Cool. But I think, like in Warbreaker where you use the awakenings and breaths to like trick objects into thinking they have different properties. Pretty sure that's
Yeah.
what the painting does to the nightmares, because I think the nightmares are obviously spiritual plane things that are tied to the physical plane, which again, there's a story in Arcanum Unbound that unpacks that a bit more. That we haven't gotten to. But that's how I took it. It's like the nightmares were spiritual plane things, but like they still have cognitive beings, and that they were able to manipulate the cognitive being's identity by painting.
Yeah.
I didn't understand why the spirits only cared about rock stacking and not painting.
Yeah, I didn't really get that either. Because
Well,
I
I
would
guess
think
they
it would
weren't
be
Spirits, they
all
were-
art.
I don't know. Well, maybe it's because you notice that design in the story was like, oh yeah, the rocks and the math and the intentionality, and maybe it's like because these are certain cognitive beings, because they actually aren't spirits, they're cognitive beings similar to ones you've seen in Stormlight, or because I think aren't the Scions and Elantris also like cognitive beings?
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, so I think these cognitive beings, maybe they just do really like rock math. I don't know.
They like rock math.
So I don't know.
I don't like anything with the word math in it.
Oh, no, math is fine. Math is just a language. You can't hate a language. That's bad.
Math does not enter my brain very well.
I forget. So this was obviously very Wheel of Time of Sanderson of like, and then they went too deep.
Twas the problem.
Well, it's not just Wheel of Time, but Wheel of Time. Its whole thing is they burrowed too deep for magic, and then suddenly they released something they shouldn't have. Which that's what they were doing.
Which is obviously very Lord of the Rings inspired with the Balrog and the dwarves.
True.
But that never feels techie to me. I don't know why. But you're right. Like, obviously, I mean, so much of fantasy is what happens when you push beyond balances and industrial eras on the horizon. And I think sometimes it's weird to me because I'm like, well, fantasy can also be techie. But then everyone's like, but now it's sci-fi. Must be sci-fi.
Must be sci-fi.
I'm like,
right.
Okay.
As soon as it's like not swords and sorcery, people are like, not fantasy anymore. Like, but really.
I'm like, okay.
Sure.
Narrow your view. Have less fun. Go for it.
It can be sci-fantasy. Sure. We'll just lump it.
That's just going to be the automatic reaction now. Have less fun.
Have less fun.
I mean, it does not affect me. I'll just keep reading the books that come out. Like, I don't care.
I know, right? But that awakened machine that was like taking over everything.
It was like the classic, like, maybe not the iRobot books, but like the iRobot movie where it's like the AI just misunderstood her directives.
Yes!
It's that classic trope of like, it just knows it has to keep going. It doesn't understand anything else.
It's like, it's awakened enough and it's going to defend itself, but it's not really sure that it's screwing everything else up.
It reminded me of Nightblood outside of its sheath, like how it'll keep taking stuff.
Yes.
Yep.
It did actually remind me a lot of Nightblood.
I think they function very similarly. I think in terms of investiture and
without the personality.
Well, the other one doesn't have a personality. The other one's just a machine going rocks.
Stack rocks.
You add a personality to something, I'm all in.
I'm there for it. What did you think of our giant machine, Roger?
It was fine. I mean, so far, none of the secret projects have felt uber fantasy to me. They've all been much more sci-fi leaning, or this one, I guess, was more paranormal-esque. None of them have felt like they've had really cool magic systems for me, like not a la Mistborn or Warbreaker. Like it never feels like they have this intrinsic power to do cool things. It's always kind of like removed. Like in Tress, it's the spores, and this one, it's just he paints or she stacks rocks. Like that's not like magic.
Right, magic. But I feel like a lot of his magic isn't
me,
magic.
I still think it feels very magical, but maybe it's just like the idea of like you get this cognitive thing and you're like, well, this person needs X. Like when Yumi was doing her fake, VR situation, will you become? And like knowing that that's how her world used to function, of just people asking the cognitive plane for aid, and then it would just do stuff. I don't know. That feels very magical to me. But I always did say I became a physics major because I wanted to major in magic, and that's the closest I could get. So my idea of magic is there's a lot of wonder in the structure of the universe.
Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah. But I feel like the magic, it wasn't as maybe epic as we're used to.
Yeah, it didn't feel as epic, but
it felt magical to me.
Well, and like I did feel stressed for people because I'm like, I don't really know what's happening here. And then like we never really discussed the fact that there are actually aliens on this other planet.
Right. Right?
I don't know what aliens look like in the Cosmere, but apparently they're out there.
They're there.
That's like right. It's like, oh, we have dragons now, like real dragons. We haven't had real dragons yet, but now we have a real one.
We have a real dragon. And now we have a real aliens somewhere out there. Because wasn't it at the end, like, Hoyd's going to hop on the spaceship? It's like, let's commandeer this spaceship that's going to the other planet that we thought Yumi was on. But really, we know nothing about this other planet at all. It's just there.
Right.
After we're done with this part, can we have like a mini discussion about Stormlight? Just because
Yeah.
like there is something I want to say.
It's
It
hard
feels
not
good.
to, because I think
Yeah,
on the
'cause that was the thing I was thinking about most.
yeah, because I think on the timeline too, it is post
It's post Rhythm of War.
Roshar. Like
Yeah.
it is post like
I don't know how far out. I just know it's post Rhythm of War.
yeah.
I'm not chronically on this Copper Shard site. I have no idea.
I'm not
They've-
good with it. I'm
they've,
just like they have too much. Like I don't have that much brain capacity. I don't have that many brain cells to like really rub that together.
Well, I just don't
Right.
care enough.
yeah, I was about to say, like, I think I'm getting what I want from the pages.
Yeah.
It's not like
Yeah.
subtext. It's usually very text.
Yeah.
It's like,
Like I can get that it is farther out than Rhythm of War. That's all I need to know.
Well, I just don't want to have to take notes. I don't want to turn it into a school assignment of like I need to put
Yeah.
together the dates. And
Yeah.
there was this random reference to this thing and this thing, so therefore it's like around the time of City of Dusk or whatever it is, 6 of the Dusk.
That makes
Yeah.
it too unfun for me.
Yeah.
It makes it seem like a job, like work, like a school. Like and that's like, nah, I want to have
well,
fun.
that's why people make videos and make the posts, and you can just absorb it
Yeah.
that way if you want.
Right.
Exactly.
And if that is fun for you, cool. I love that for you. I love that for
For
you.
you.
Does anybody
Does
else have
anyone have other
non-Stormlight
Cosmere thoughts for
before
Stormlight?
we jump?
Hi, Evie.
Hi, Evie.
Oh, and I
Evie does
forgot to
not
put
care if
this
we
one
talk
up.
about Sporelight. Stormlight.
Sporelight.
Did you say
Sporelight.
Sporelight?
I love it.
At this point, it could be a thing. We have spores.
I was just gonna say that. I was like, that sounds actually kind of cool.
Right. I forgot to put this one up about culture. Agreeing with you.
Hmm.
Evie. All right, so we're gonna jump into Stormlight, which we haven't gotten to yet, but
Well, I just
if
want
you
to talk about a
remember,
very specific
just
plot
very-
point.
yeah,
'Cause
we are having a mini Stormlight.
Well, this is full Stormlight spoilers, like
Right.
end of Stormlight Rhythm of War. Because I
Yes.
think collectively, we as a community freaked out very hard when Wit/Hoyd got affected by, what's his face with the shard? Can't remember his name. Odium shard holder person. And I was just like, and then this one, he directly is like, oh, the reason I became into stone is because once someone messed with the breath in my memory and I needed to make sure that didn't happen again. I'm like, okay, he found out, he's okay, and now
Right.
I'm a little less stressed.
But how
Yeah,
long has
so-
it been since he figured it out?
Would you like Yumi? Calm down. You would hate it.
I was like, it's too cute and happy. I feel like it's
Yeah.
not sad enough for you, Evie.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, no, your biggest chances were Elantris or Warbreaker. You didn't hate Elantris, but that's not a ringing endorsement, and I don't think like I can't even imagine a world where suddenly Evie's like, actually, this sparked joy.
Like,
No.
what? This made me happy.
There are other books way more suited to her tastes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But no, that was my big Stormlight thing, is I was just very nervous for Hoyd at the end of Rhythm of War, and this was a nice little mini, like, okay, he's okay. We don't know what happens between then and now. Who knows how he finds
But
out
as of right now, he's okay.
he's okay.
Which we are glad about. Oh, we also didn't touch on the one character whose name I cannot remember, but she was the hive,
Can't
the
remember.
bug hive. Creepy things that always creep me out.
Oh, the crab.
Yeah,
The what are they called? Chasm?
something like that.
I
Chasm?
always just assume the crabs are everywhere and I move on. It's very Elden Ring.
Chasm fiend the right word? Or am I just making that up?
No,
Chasm
chasm
fiends
is a
are a
different
thing in
thing, but that's
Stormlight.
not the crabs.
It's not the little. It's like the hive mind.
What is,
In Dawn Shard is when you really see them. There are certain creatures that are across. They're the aliens, essentially.
Okay.
They're like our
I
only-
think I was distracted because Lift annoyed me.
Well, Liv
Yeah.
doesn't interact.
Not Dawn Shard. I'm thinking of the other one. Never mind.
No, the crabs are.
It's Jazer.
No,
I
they're
would
just
die on my
they're
love of
symbiotic
them.
beings. There's many parts of
Gotcha.
them. Yeah,
Gotcha. I'm with you now.
And they like
they're part of some Star Trek organization that's just observing.
literally. And
Like,
she's
I
just
don't
there
know.
like, I want to be human. Just pretend I'm human. Like this whole time.
drawing scary bunny pictures.
Yes! I don't know why. I quite enjoyed the friend group, though. Like, they were all funny. I expected to hate the girl because it's like he sets them up, but Nightmare Painter is unreliable in that aspect. Like, he sets them up to be these terrible people. So you go in thinking they're going to be these terrible people, and really, they're not.
Oh, I didn't believe him for a second.
No, not at all. But I'm like, what did you do, sir? And then when we found out what he did, I was let down because I thought he did something real crappy.
I did like their shopping trip. I thought that was nice.
I thought it needed a walking on sunshine montage.
It did.
Like, 'cause that's what I think of anytime I hear a shopping anything. It's like walking on sunshine montage scene. Like every early to mid 2000s
But I never
rom-com movie where they
that
make the girl
world is
over.
sunshiny though. It'd be like walking on sunshine, but in the rain.
Right.
I envisioned it.
Yeah, was it ever sunny here? I always pictured it as night.
Yeah,
I
it
was
was always
pictured it
night.
rainy and dark. Yeah.
Until they separated the worlds. And then they were like, oh my God, what's this? What is this light? Because then they had light again.
Yeah, because I always pictured Yumi's world as sunny.
Yeah, it was always sunny there. And then always dark and Painters. And I think once they separated the world, at least how I got it, once they were like, oh, we brought down the boundaries, it went back to like what a normal, like cyclical world would be like with day and night. And they
I'm
had
sure
no
the
idea what
agriculture's
this
gonna
bright
have a
stuff
time.
was. I think the floating trees they were like, we have floating trees now here. Like,
Well, because they
those
were a part of
stayed.
the land. Like, all of the VR simulation stuff was based off what the land used to be like. In certain parts, like certain parts of the land were way too hot, and other parts were like normal. And it was like a globe, you know, different climates.
It was a globe.
Yeah, you know, it's really hot if you know, in Florida. It's really reasonable here in Massachusetts. Like,
It's a
hot
tropical storm
here.
here in Southern California that
is
got
that
downgraded
normal
from
for
a
you
hurricane.
guys?
No, this is the first time in 85 years that there's been a tropical storm in Southern California.
Oh my. Like, that's normal here. Like, oh, it's 17
Straight
named
up
storms
hurricane
already
season
this
in
year.
Florida.
Yeah.
There was about to be a hurricane and it downgraded right before it hit California. It was like category 4 off the coast, and then it downgraded. I was like, thank God. Like, it's the
You're
last
lucky
thing we
because the
need.
Pacific is cold. That's probably why. Because out here, the Gulf and the Atlantic get so warm at this time of year, and that's why it usually ramps up right before it hits.
Right? We're just used to it. Like, oh, it's a storm. Woo.
Yeah.
My hair's gonna hate it.
My head always hates it because we very rarely get them all the way up here.
Mhm.
And once Jose was just chilling off the coast, just spinning. And it's like hurricanes are just low and high pressure systems in a circle. And my head hates that. And so it'd just be like migraine.
Mm-hmm.
And then I learned I can never live near hurricanes.
Rub it in, mother. Sorry. I talked to her the other day. She's wearing a sweatshirt.
Nova
It's
Scotia?
so chilly here.
I mean, my 10-year-old is also wearing flannels and sweaters, but like it's still 100 degrees, and I'm like, I don't understand you. You're gonna die of heat stroke.
Well, back to Yumi.
Back to Yumi not wearing sweaters in 100-degree weather.
Any other moments, thoughts, opinions?
I feel like this is the most eminently adaptable of his stuff. The world isn't that complicated. The story, I think, would almost come across better in like a visual format because it was so focused on the aesthetics of the blue and the purple high-on lines, and everything was about the way things looked.
I would watch that anime.
Yeah, because I think now that you say that, I think this one visually is the one I remember probably the best out of the recent ones we've read.
I would say I would really want animated. I don't want people complaining about the CGI of these trees. I don't want it.
Look,
don't want
the hill I will die on, period, is that all Cosmere should be animated.
I mean, that's me in like every fantasy thing. Some of my fantasy and superhero stuff, like sure, do live action once in a while if people really need. But I just like watching it drawn because then you can do wacky stuff and no one cares because you're not looking for realism because you already know it's a show. I don't know what people have a relationship with VFX effects, and I just don't understand it.
People
I think that's also
thought,
because we grew up in the era of like the CW '90s shows where like the VFX were terrible, but you didn't
Yeah.
care.
but you didn't
No,
care.
because
Yeah.
I at least had my dumb witchy show. Like I at
Yeah.
least had it.
Yes.
But you also didn't go into those like these effects are going to be amazing.
Right.
I think
I
what
don't go
is
into
annoying
anything
is when you can
expecting that.
tell when
Right.
things like are worse than what they used to be. Like I think I was very annoyed for Game of Thrones of how bad their dragon riding was for the original series. House of the Dragon does better, especially because it came out so many years after Harry Potter 3 where we ride griffins.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that looks really good. And like I
And
know
that's-
your budget's not that level, but we're also 10 years removed.
That's why I got irritated with the Hobbit movies versus Lord of the Rings. Like it's doable. It didn't have to be that crappy.
Also,
Specifically,
it didn't have to
the
be
third
3
one.
movies.
Well, that too, but yeah,
Listen, I will say as someone who hasn't
but
read
that's a good
Silmarillion,
point.
the extended Hobbit movies actually filled in some questions I've had for decades. I'm like, why do we care? No one can ever tell me. And then suddenly the Hobbit movie tells me. And I'm like, thank you.
I know.
I like the Hobbit movies, but they are a different project than the book, and it was silly that they blew it out to 3 movies. But whatever, I still like that they exist. I like
Yeah,
Thranduil riding around on his big ass deer thing,
I
the
did.
Megaloceros or whatever the hell it's called with the horn.
I don't know if I needed the dwarf elf romance. That felt weird.
No. And why did Legolas look older? I mean, I know the actor is older,
mean,
but
That
there's
Because they tried to
now
digitally
answered
age
your
him
question.
Because
They tried to
Orlando
digitally
Bloom
age him down.
ages.
I know, but
Unfortunately.
again, there are things you can do.
Also, wasn't his hair longer too? Because men's age is very dependent on their hair. Like Ryan can age 10 years one way or the other if he has his beard or not. Like it's just wild.
This is true.
Jeff too. He shaves and I'm like, are you 12?
Yeah,
What
no, it's-
happened?
So I think also there's perceived age that can just be cosmetic. But also Legolas never has a beard, so I don't know if it's just maybe his hair was longer.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Possibly.
I mean, he was just there for fan service. I don't think there was a plot reason for him to be around.
It's just there because everyone likes Orlando.
Except
Bloom.
that was the kingdom that he's from, because
But
that was his daddy.
the only connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is a very tangential live show.
Yes.
It's better than the Warbreaker one. We've been way more on point.
I know, but I
We
think
stayed with
Warbreaker,
fantasy
we were all
stories.
brain dead.
We stayed with fantasy. I mean, Warbreaker, we got a little. That's the one where I was at the beach. I had.
Yes, you were having a good time.
I was having
Yeah.
a great time.
I was sleep deprived and brain dead.
I had like 2 bottles of wine at that point. I had to survive a weekend with my family, whole family. It was a
Fair.
good time. And we all want to see Yumi animated. I will die on the hill of
Would be good.
all Cosmere should be animated and
Yes.
not live action.
Also, if it's
It's not
animated,
going
we
to
don't have
be.
to worry about the current strikes because I think the animation guild's completely different. So we
I'm
can
pretty
just
sure.
move it
There we
along.
go.
This is true.
And just move it along.
I don't know if that's the same for the voice actors guild though.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, they are going to have their own thing too because a lot of companies
Yeah.
are like making them sign things like we can use your voice, and they're like, oh no.
And they're absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we have all touched on our random ass thoughts on Yumi and the Nightmare Fair. What's our next one? Way of Kings? Is that where we're at? White. Oh, yeah.
Potentially
I
just
don't like sand.
Okay.
Potentially just Arcanum Unbounded.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we start Stormlight till next year because I think we
We
are
start it in
doing the
November.
4th Secret
So-
Book.
Okay.
is
No,
Emperor
we start reading it in
Soul,
November, then discuss it in February or something.
Yeah.
is Emperor Soul in Arcanum, or is that
It is.
completely
It's
separate?
like one of the first stories.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Secret
Okay.
History is also in there, but obviously we can skip that because we already talked about that with
Mhm.
Mistborn back in the day.
Yep.
Back in the day.
Many moons ago.
Many years ago.
Okay.
Are we doing Edge Dancer too?
I
That will
think
be
that one
part
should
of
be read with
Stormlight. Is it-
Stormlight. That one should
Okay.
be read
That's not
after.
Arcanum.
Yeah.
'Cause I
It
can't-
is in Arcanum.
It's
Edge
in the
Dancer.
new Arcanums. It's not in like.
It was in the original Arcanum. The one
Was
I bought
it?
when it came out had Edge Dancer. That was the whole reason to buy it.
Oh no! What's the other one that came out? The other
Dawn Shard is not
in the
Dawn Shard is
Arcanum.
not in it.
Yeah. Well, maybe it is now, but like
Right,
the
I'm thinking
original
that
Arc Kingdom
then.
Unbound had Edge Dancer. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
Every new release is just going to keep getting bigger and bigger.
Bigger and bigger.
Well, because I remember every other short story had been published in one form or another except for Edge Dancer.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like, not only would they all be printed together, but there was a new story.
Right.
That's right. As Dawn Shard came out after. I'm sure it's in the new versions.
I wonder.
Version.
I don't know.
I don't know.
But no, but that one should be read after Words of
Or come
Radiance.
out with a volume 2.
That is all part of the plan already. I think I'm pretty sure I have it on the schedule that it's with
It is. I just can't remember.
with Words of Radiance.
According
Yeah.
to Wikipedia, it only has Edge Dancer as the last story.
Okay.
You only have to read like half of Arcanum Unbounded anyways, because the biggest chunks of it are
Secret History.
Secret History and Edge Dancer, yeah.
Yeah, you have Edge Dancer with Words of Radiance and Dawn
Yeah.
Shard with Oathbringer.
look at me go.
Look at you.
So
Like I
well.
thought about this a year and a half ago or whenever this was conceived.
It was conceived a while ago because I had to go through your
Was.
Twitter to find this calendar, and I was like, God, when did we first start
Oh,
talking
I
about
just
this?
saved it on my
It is
phone.
pinned. It's pinned in the Discord.
I
of
looked in the
first
Discord.
two.
Which chat is it pinned in? Because I looked.
The first two.
I'm going to look right now because I swear I went to every channel and was trying to find these. I went to announcements and it wasn't pinned there. I didn't know where to
I
look.
just saved it to my phone, my photo gallery.
I think it's in the first two spoiler channels. So like the one, whatever we did first.
Oh, why isn't it in like like your announcements thing though?
Does that make too much sense?
Like,
So if we skip White Sand, then we have Secret Project 4 and then Arcanum Unbounded. And that's
Secret
what
Project 4 is when? October?
talk about it November. I'll be real. I'm teaching this fall, so I'm cool with just like removing White Sand and moving and just keeping everything else as is.
That's fine.
But I'll do whatever it takes. I'm excited about the short stories because I really like them.
I am too. There's some that I haven't read yet. So I'm
I've
really
probably
excited.
haven't read most of them.
So short stories minus Edge Dancer. Don't do it. Read that after Words of Radiance.
Otherwise,
then-
it really won't make sense. Like
It
won't.
really won't.
Yeah.
You'll just get annoyed about Lift wanting pancakes.
Shut up. I love her.
I was going to say, I don't understand the hatred for this young
I
child.
don't understand the
don't-
hatred.
I don't
I
hate
don't hate her. I just don't want to follow
anymore.
her perspective. I don't care.
I do.
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
That's how
I will
Somebody-
save my lift thoughts for that, but
You cannot love Anne as much as you do and dislike Lift as much as you do because they are
I
they are
can.
cousins.
I don't hate Lift. She's just not my favorite.
she reminds me
Just
so
saying,
much of
you
my
love
10-year-old.
Anne from Anne of Green Gables, and I've never met such a kindred character spirit to Lift in my life.
She reminds me of my
And maybe
10-year-old.
maybe I'll think differently when I reread it next year. But
Now
at
you're gonna
the
have to think
time,
Anne of Green Gables in the background, and it will maybe help you
Yeah.
love her more.
Yeah.
maybe then it'll be like an
She's
aha
just
moment.
precocious. Like that's it.
She's a
Or
real
maybe-
child. That's I think what gets me.
I think that's what
like
that's what irritates me. I don't know.
I have a real child that reminds me of her, so it's very always wants to eat and kind of obnoxious.
Well, I need to go eat lunch because then I'm gonna go look at kittens.
Yes.
We
Enjoy.
want all the photos.
Enjoy.
Well, we'll see
All
what
the
I get. I
photos.
mostly want to see if I'm allowed to hold them yet. But they're only 3.5 weeks old. I'll be content to just
Babies.
they're babies. Itty bitty babies.
I love it.
But-
Help me convince my husband I need another creature living in my house.
Dude, I was surprised when I said 1 kitten or 2 that my husband said 2. So,
I mean,
Mine
two are
said
good though because then they
absolutely
grow up
nothing.
together, they play
they're
together.
friends. Yeah, no, there was
Yeah.
his exact words were, "I can see an argument for 2," and I'm like, well, that just means we're getting 2 because I'm not.
That That's all I had to say.
Yeah.
Like I heard yes, so
I heard
that's
yes.
what we're going with.
We were Evie. We were going to get a kitten even if Delilah was still around. Just now that she's not, we're getting 2 because one of my favorite cats had a litter. It was Tony's mom had a litter, so I'm like,
Oh,
the only downside is it's in a barn, so it's like I'm gonna have to figure out the flea situation, but it should be fine. As long as I
You
don't
got
take them
this.
too early. Yeah. All right. Well, that's decidedly not Yumi.
We
Well.
started with cats and we ended with cats.
And we ended with
You know,
cats.
full circle.
Yep, it's a cycle. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. As we discussed, our next read is going to be the short stories, which I'm excited about because I haven't read
I
most
The
thought
of
it
next one
was
will
gonna
be Secret Project 4.
Or 4,
Secret
yeah.
Project.
4.
which I'm sure will be fun to discuss
Your
because
coffee's
all I've
empty.
heard is that it's made in
Yes.
Stormlight adjacent, which we haven't read yet. So it'll be a
Yes.
time.
That will be a time. I'm excited.
Oh, we'll just have to disclaimer that when we're talking Cosmere spoilers, it's going to have to include Stormlight, most likely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Most likely. Like,
Which
I
is
don't
fun.
know. I know nothing about it. That's the
I
one.
know nothing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody. This was fun,
Yes.
and we will see you in the next one.